In the vast expanse of the Galactic Council chambers, where species from 1,000 worlds gather to decide the fate of civilizations, one rule has never been broken: never underestimate a human from Earth. But when 17-year-old Maya Chen steps into that circle of alien predators, she's about to teach the galaxy's most dangerous beings why humans call their planet a death world, and why that's exactly what makes them the most terrifying species in the universe. Maya Chun pressed her face against the observation window as the massive Galactic Council station came into view. The structure stretched across space like a metallic flower, its petals spinning slowly in the void. Each section housed different atmospheric requirements for the hundreds of species that called the galaxy home. At 17, she was about to become the youngest human ever to step foot inside those halls. Nervous? Captain Rodriguez asked from behind her. The transport ship's commander had been unusually quiet during their 3-day journey from Earth. Maya shook her head, though her heart hammered against her ribs. Excited, maybe. This is what I've been preparing for my entire life. That much was true. Since the age of 12, when her linguistic abilities had caught the attention of Earth's diplomatic corps, Maya had studied alien cultures, languages, and psychology. She could speak 17 different galactic languages fluently and understand the basic cultural taboos of 43 species. What she hadn't prepared for was the weight of representing her entire planet at such a young age. The docking procedure took an hour. Maya watched through the porthole as mechanical arms guided their small vessel into one of the station's many bays. The artificial gravity shifted slightly as they connected, and she felt her stomach lurch. Not from the motion, but from anticipation. "Remember," Captain Rodriguez said as they prepared to disembark, "you're not just Maya Chun in there. You're humanity. Every move you make, every word you speak, reflects on our entire species." Maya nodded, straightening her diplomatic robes. The Earth delegation had chosen traditional formal wear rather than anything too technological. It sent a message that humans valued ceremony and respect. What they hadn't told her was that many species would interpret this as primitive behavior. The airlock hissed open, revealing a corridor that stretched beyond her vision. The walls were a soft blue color that supposedly promoted calm in most galactic species. Maya took her first step onto the station and immediately noticed the subtle differences. The air was thicker than Earth normal, with a metallic taste that made her nose twitch. The gravity was slightly lower, making each step feel like a small bounce. Ambassador Valdez, Earth's senior representative, was waiting for her in the reception area. He was a tall man with graying hair and kind eyes that had seen decades of interstellar diplomacy. Beside him stood 3 alien beings that Maya recognized from her studies. The first was a Keltorian, standing nearly 8 feet tall with 4 arms and skin that shifted from green to blue as emotions changed. Currently, it displayed a neutral gray, which Maya interpreted as professional courtesy. The second was smaller, barely reaching her waist, with large eyes and delicate features that marked it as a Jinti. The third being made Maya's breath catch. She had never seen a Vorthack in person. The Vorthack stood 7 feet tall and was built like a predator that had evolved beyond the need to hunt. Its skin was dark as space, with patterns that seemed to shift in the light. Red eyes studied Maya with an intelligence that felt uncomfortably penetrating. The species was known throughout the galaxy as one of the most dangerous, having conquered 12 systems through sheer military might before joining the Council. "Maya," Ambassador Valdez said warmly, "I'd like you to meet Council Representative Thrix of the Keltorian Federation, Diplomatic Aide Zep of the Genie Collective, and Military Advisor Kroth of the Vorthack Hegemony." Maya bowed in the style appropriate for each species, drawing surprised looks from all 3 aliens. The Keltorian's skin shifted to a pleased yellow-green. The Jinti chittered softly in approval, and the Vorthack's expression remained unreadable. "Impressive," Thrix rumbled, its voice like distant thunder. "The human child knows our customs." The word child stung, but Maya kept her expression neutral. At 17, she was legally an adult on Earth and had the intellectual capacity to match any being in the galaxy. However, she understood that many species matured differently, and, to them, she might indeed seem like a child. "I've studied galactic cultures extensively," Maya replied in perfect Keltorian. Then, switched to Junti for Zep, and, finally, to Vorthak for Kroth. I look forward to learning from direct experience. Kroth's red eyes narrowed slightly. When it spoke, its voice carried an undertone that made Maya's primitive brain want to run. The human speaks our language as well. But can it survive our presence? Maya felt the hair on her arms stand up. There was something in the Vorthak's tone that suggested this wasn't just diplomatic posturing. She was being evaluated, and not just intellectually. Maya will be attending the junior diplomatic course sessions, Ambassador Valdez interjected smoothly. She'll have plenty of time to adapt to station life gradually. Of course, Zep said in heavily accented Standard Galactic. The young ones must be protected while they learn. Again with the diminutive references. Maya bit back her irritation and smiled politely. She had expected this, had prepared for it. But experiencing it was different than reading about it in reports. The tour of the station took 3 hours. Maya marveled at the engineering required to maintain so many different atmospheric zones, gravity levels, and temperature ranges. The central hub operated on a standard environment that most species could tolerate, but each spoke of the station catered to specific needs. They passed through markets where beings traded goods from across the galaxy. Maya saw crystalline formations that sang when touched, fabrics that changed color with the wearer's mood, and foods that defied her understanding of chemistry. The diversity was breathtaking. But what struck her most was the way other beings looked at her. Some showed curiosity, others amusement, and a few displayed what could only be described as pity. None showed the respect she saw directed toward adult diplomats. Why do they look at me like that? Maya asked Thrix during a quiet moment. The Keltorian skin shifted to a thoughtful purple. Humans are known to come from what the galaxy calls a death world. Your planet is considered extremely dangerous by galactic standards. Most species assume that humans must be fragile to survive such conditions through hiding rather than adaptation. Maya frowned. But that's not how it works. Humans survived Earth because we adapted to become stronger, not weaker. Theory and reality are often different things, young human. Many species believe that Deathworld inhabitants are either savage or delicate. Since you appear civilized, you must be delicate. The logic was flawed, but Maya understood the cultural bias behind it. Earth was indeed a dangerous planet by galactic standards. Between the predators, natural disasters, diseases, and environmental challenges, most species couldn't survive a day on the surface. But that was exactly what made humans dangerous, not weak. Her quarters were in the diplomatic wing, a small but comfortable room with a view of space. Maya stood at the window, watching distant stars and thinking about tomorrow. Her first diplomatic session would be with the Junior Corps, supposedly an easier introduction to galactic politics. A soft chime indicated someone at her door. Maya opened it to find a being she didn't recognize from her studies. It stood about her height with blue-gray skin and large, dark eyes. Its build was slight, almost delicate. "Excuse the intrusion," it said in Standard Galactic. "I am Diplomat Yez of the Moran Republic. I wanted to welcome the human representative personally." Maya bowed politely. "Thank you, Diplomat Yez. I'm Maya Chun. Please, come in." Yez entered and looked around the room with interest. These quarters are quite spacious for a junior representative. Earth must hold significant influence for you to receive such accommodations. There was something probing in the question, but Maya couldn't identify exactly what. "I believe all junior diplomats receive similar quarters," she replied carefully. "Ah, but not all junior diplomats are the youngest representative in galactic history." Yez settled into one of the chairs with fluid grace. "Tell me, Maya Chun, what makes Earth believe a child can handle diplomatic responsibilities?" Maya felt her jaw tighten, but kept her voice level. "I've been trained extensively in galactic law, cultural studies, and diplomatic protocol. Age is just a number when it comes to competence." Spoken like a true child, Yez said with what might have been amusement. "You'll learn that the galaxy is more dangerous than your training simulations. Many species view youth as either opportunity or threat. What do you view it as?" Maya asked directly. Yez's dark eyes studied her for a long moment. "I view it as curiosity. Humans are an enigma, Maya Chun. Your species conquered a death world, built a space-faring civilization in mere centuries, and now sends children as ambassadors. Either you're incredibly confident or incredibly naive. Maybe both, Maya said honestly. For the first time, Yes showed something that might have been genuine emotion. That, young human, might be exactly what makes your species so interesting. Be careful tomorrow. The junior corps may seem safer than full diplomatic sessions, but politics is politics regardless of age. After Yes left, Maya stood at her window again, processing the conversation. Every interaction since her arrival had carried undercurrents she wasn't quite grasping. Tomorrow would be her first real test, and she suspected it would be more challenging than her training had prepared her for. Maya activated her personal communicator and recorded a brief message for her family on Earth. She kept it light, describing the station's wonders and her excitement about beginning her diplomatic career. She didn't mention the subtle challenges or the growing sense that she was being evaluated for something beyond her diplomatic skills. As she prepared for sleep in the unfamiliar bed, Maya reflected on a phrase from her cultural studies. In space, no one can hear you scream, but everyone can see you fail. Tomorrow, she would find out what the galaxy expected from Earth's youngest ambassador, and whether she was strong enough to exceed those expectations. The lights dimmed automatically as the station entered its night cycle. Through her window, Maya could see the slow rotation of the station's arms and the steady flow of ships arriving and departing. Somewhere out there, billions of beings live their lives across thousands of worlds, and tomorrow she would represent humanity to their leaders. Sleep came slowly, filled with dreams of red eyes and shifting shadows, of voices speaking in languages she understood, but words that carried meanings she couldn't grasp. In her dreams, she stood in a vast room surrounded by beings who watched her with expressions she couldn't read, waiting for something she couldn't understand. When she woke, Maya realized that her unconscious mind had been preparing her for exactly what was about to happen. The Junior Diplomatic Corps meeting room was smaller than Maya had expected, but what it lacked in size it made up for in intimidation factor. 12 beings sat around an oval table, each representing different species and political interests. Maya took her assigned seat and immediately felt the weight of their collective attention. She recognized some faces from her cultural studies, but seeing them in person was different. Across from her sat Jorik, a Kytherian whose species was known for their aggressive negotiation tactics. To her left was Miran, a Solari whose people prided themselves on intellectual superiority. The others represented various factions, some friendly to humanity, others neutral, and a few that were openly hostile to Earth's inclusion in galactic politics. Welcome, beings, to today's session, announced moderator Vex, a tall Altarian whose blue skin seemed to shimmer in the chamber's lighting. Today we have a special addition to our corps. Maya Chin of Earth will be joining us for her first diplomatic experience. Polite acknowledgments rippled around the table, though Maya noticed some were more sincere than others. Jorik's greeting was barely perceptible, while Miran's was accompanied by what she interpreted as a condescending smile. Today's topic, Vex continued, involves trade route negotiations through the neutral zone, a practical exercise in resource allocation and territorial respect. Maya had studied this exact scenario during her training. The neutral zone was a buffer area between major galactic powers where trade routes were constantly being renegotiated based on political pressures. It was a perfect training ground for young diplomats because the stakes were relatively low, but the principles were identical to larger negotiations. Let's begin with opening positions, Vex said. Who would like to represent the Kytherian trade interests? Jorik leaned forward, his scaled features set in what Maya recognized as his species' equivalent of determination. The Kytherian Confederation requires unrestricted access to shipping lanes 7 through 12. Our merchant fleet has used these routes for 3 generations. Interesting, Miran interjected smoothly. The Solari Scientific Collective has noted unusual gravitational fluctuations in that sector. Perhaps a more thorough survey is needed before any unrestricted access is granted. Maya watched the exchange carefully. This wasn't really about trade routes or gravitational surveys. Jorik was testing the room's response to aggressive positioning, while Miran was establishing her species' authority through scientific credibility. Both were standard opening gambits. The Jinti Collective supports careful scientific analysis, added Pip, a small Jinti representative whose voice was barely audible. Safety must come before profit. 3 more beings offered their initial positions, each following predictable patterns based on their species' cultural norms. Maya listened, analyzed, and waited for her moment to contribute. The key to these exercises wasn't to dominate early, but to find the perfect moment to add value to the discussion. And what does the human representative think? Jorik asked suddenly, fixing Maya with a stare that felt predatory. Does Earth have opinions on trade routes it has never used? The question was clearly designed to put Maya on the defensive. Her species was new to galactic politics, and Earth's merchant fleet was tiny compared to established powers. But the question also revealed something important. Jorik saw her as a threat worth testing. Maya met his gaze steadily. Earth's perspective might be valuable precisely because we haven't invested in existing route structures. We can evaluate proposals based on objective merit rather than historical bias. Objective merit? Miran's tone was amused. And what would a teenage human know about objective analysis? The dig was obvious, but Maya recognized the trap. Responding defensively would confirm their assessment of her as immature. Instead, she smiled slightly and pulled up the holographic display at her seat. I've been reviewing the shipping data for all proposed routes, Maya said, manipulating the display to show traffic patterns, efficiency ratings, and resource utilization. Route 7, which the Kytherian Confederation claims by historical precedent, actually shows declining efficiency over the past 5 years. Meanwhile, Route 15, which nobody has mentioned, shows optimal traffic flow and minimal gravitational interference. The room went quiet. Maya had just demonstrated that she'd done more research than most of them, and had identified something they'd missed. Route 15 was indeed optimal, but it would require cooperation between 3 different species territories. Route 15 crosses Vorthack space, Jorik said slowly. The hegemony has never allowed civilian traffic in that sector. Maya nodded, which is why nobody considered it. But if we're truly optimizing for galactic trade efficiency rather than individual territorial advantages, Route 15 could increase shipping capacity by 30% while reducing transit time by 18%. The human child suggests we negotiate with the Vorthack hegemony? Miran's voice carried disbelief. Does she understand what that would involve? Maya felt her patience beginning to fray. The constant references to her age were getting old, but she forced herself to remain calm. I understand that the Vorthack hegemony values strength and directness. I also understand that they respect logical proposals that benefit their interests. And you believe you could present such a proposal? This came from Dex, a Corvani representative who had been silent until now. I believe anyone could, with proper preparation and understanding of Vorthack cultural values, Maya replied. Jorik leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. Perhaps our young human friend would like to demonstrate this understanding. After all, theory and practice are very different things. Maya felt the shift in the room's atmosphere. What had started as a training exercise was becoming something else entirely. The other beings were no longer participating in a simulation. They were watching to see how she would handle a direct challenge. Are you suggesting a live negotiation? Maya asked carefully. Why not? Miran said, her tone deceptively casual. If the human believes she understands Vorthack psychology, let her put that knowledge to the test. Vex looked uncomfortable. That might be beyond the scope of today's exercise. The junior core is meant for theoretical development, not actual diplomatic contact. But surely the human representative is prepared for real diplomacy, Jorik pressed. After all, Earth sent her here for practical experience, not more theory. Maya realized she was being maneuvered into a position where refusing would make her look weak, but accepting could put her in a genuinely dangerous situation. The Vorthack hegemony wasn't known for patience with diplomatic mistakes, and she was still learning the nuances of interspecies communication. What exactly are you proposing? Maya asked. Dex activated his communicator. Military advisor Croth is currently on the station. Perhaps he would be willing to hear the humans' proposal regarding Route 15. Maya's stomach clenched. Croth was the same Vorthack she'd met yesterday, and his parting comment about surviving their presence suddenly seemed more ominous. But Backing down now would confirm every assumption about human weakness and her own inexperience. I'm willing to make the proposal, Maya said, hoping her voice sounded more confident than she felt. Excellent, Jorek said, and Maya caught what might have been satisfaction in his expression. I'm sure this will be very educational for all of us. The communication with Croth took only minutes to arrange. The Vorthak agreed to meet with the junior corps to hear Maya's proposal, which Maya suspected meant he was curious about what the human child would try to accomplish. Before he arrives, Vex said quietly, I should mention that Vorthak negotiations are intense. They value directness, but they also test their negotiation partners to ensure they're worthy of respect. Don't take anything personally. Maya nodded, but her mind was racing. She'd studied Vorthak culture extensively, but there was a difference between academic knowledge and facing down one of the galaxy's most dangerous species in person. Croth entered the room 5 minutes later, and Maya immediately felt the atmosphere change. The casual chatter stopped, and several beings unconsciously shifted their postures to appear less threatening. The Vorthak's presence filled the space like a predator entering a gathering of prey animals. I understand the human child has a proposal regarding shipping routes, Croth said, his red eyes fixing on Maya with uncomfortable intensity. Thank you for agreeing to hear it, Maya replied, grateful that her voice remained steady. She activated the holographic display and began explaining her analysis of Route 15. Croth listened without interruption, but Maya could feel his attention like physical pressure. When she finished, he was silent for several heartbeats. The analysis is competent, he said finally. But you've made an assumption that reveals your inexperience. Maya felt her cheeks flush but forced herself to ask, what assumption? You assumed the hegemony's interest in efficiency. Vorthak space remains closed to civilian traffic because we choose it to remain closed. Efficiency is meaningless if it compromises security or sovereignty. It was a fair point, and one that Maya realized she should have anticipated. The Vorthak weren't just another trading partner. They were a military power that valued control over convenience. You're right, Maya said. I should have considered sovereignty concerns. But what if the route could enhance hegemony security rather than compromise it? Croth's expression shifted slightly, and Maya caught what might have been interest. Explain. Maya thought quickly. Increased traffic through Vorthak space would provide natural surveillance of the neutral zone. Any suspicious activity would be immediately reported by merchant crews. Additionally, transit fees could fund expanded patrol fleets in the sector. The human suggests turning merchants into spies, Jorek muttered, and Maya caught disapproval in his tone. Not spies, Maya corrected. Early warning systems. Merchant crews already report unusual phenomena for safety reasons. This would simply formalize the process. Croth was quiet for a long moment, his red eyes studying Maya with an intensity that made her want to fidget. Around the table, the other beings watched the exchange with fascination and growing nervousness. You propose that the hegemony sacrifice privacy for profit and surveillance, Croth said finally. Maya shook her head. I propose that the hegemony gain strategic advantage while appearing to make a sacrifice. Other species would see increased Vorthak cooperation as a sign of weakness, never realizing they were actually giving you greater control over neutral space. The silence that followed was profound. Maya realized she had just suggested something that bordered on manipulation, which was either brilliant or incredibly stupid, depending on how Croth interpreted it. Slowly, something that might have been a smile crossed the Vorthak's features. Interesting. The human child thinks like a predator. Maya wasn't sure if that was a compliment or an insult, but the shift in atmosphere suggested the former. Around the table, she noticed the other beings looking at her with new expressions. The condescension was gone, replaced by something closer to wariness. However, Croth continued, thinking like a predator and being one are different things entirely. Maya felt the challenge in his words and realized that her real test was just beginning. Croth's words hung in the air like a challenge that everyone in the room could feel. Maya sensed the other beings shifting uncomfortably in their seats, suddenly, aware that they were witnessing something beyond a simple diplomatic exercise. The Vorthak's red eyes remained fixed on her, and She realized that everything up to this point had been preliminary testing. "Stand," Croth commanded. Maya hesitated for just a moment. In human culture, such a command would be rude at best. But she remembered her studies of Vorthack social dynamics. Standing would either be seen as submission or acceptance of challenge, depending on how she carried herself. She rose slowly, keeping her posture straight but not aggressive. Around the table, she could see the other beings exchanging glances that ranged from concern to anticipation. Moderator Vex started to speak, but Croth silenced him with a gesture that brooked no argument. "The human believes she understands predator thinking," Croth said, rising to his full height. Maya had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact, but she didn't step backward. But understanding and demonstrating are different concepts entirely. The other beings began to shift their chairs away from the table, creating an open space in the center of the room. Maya realized with growing alarm that this was becoming something she hadn't anticipated. Her diplomatic training had covered many scenarios, but none had prepared her for what felt like a developing confrontation with one of the galaxy's most dangerous species. "I'm not sure I understand what you're asking," Maya said carefully. Croth moved around the table with fluid grace that reminded Maya of the big cats she'd seen in Earth's wildlife preserves. Every step was deliberate, calculated, and somehow threatening despite appearing casual. "The Vorthack do not negotiate with prey animals," he said, beginning to circle her slowly. "If Earth wishes to be taken seriously in galactic politics, it must prove that its representatives are worthy of respect." Maya felt her heart rate spike, but she forced herself to remain still as Croth continued his predatory circle. Her training had covered Vorthack intimidation tactics, but experiencing them firsthand was completely different. Every primitive instinct in her brain was screaming at her to run, to submit, to do anything except stand in the path of something so obviously dangerous. "How does one prove worthiness to the Vorthack?" she asked, proud that her voice remained steady. "By demonstrating that you are predator, not prey," Croth replied. He had completed one full circle and was beginning a second, moving slightly closer with each pass. Prey animals submit when faced with superior force. Predators evaluate, adapt, and respond. Jorik leaned forward in his chair, his scaled features showing what Maya interpreted as excitement. "This is highly irregular," he said, but his tone suggested he was enjoying the spectacle. "The human requested real negotiation," Mirren observed coolly. "Perhaps she should experience what that actually involves." Maya realized that the other beings weren't going to intervene. Whether from curiosity, entertainment, or their own political calculations, they were content to watch her face this challenge alone. She was truly representing not just herself, but her entire species in this moment. Croth completed his second circle, moving closer still. Maya could now see the details of his alien features clearly. The way his dark skin seemed to absorb light, the intelligence burning in those red eyes, the way he moved with perfect balance and control. Everything about him screamed apex predator. "Your species survived a death world," Croth said conversationally, as if discussing weather rather than circling like prey. "This suggests adaptation and resilience. But surviving through hiding is different than surviving through dominance." "Humans didn't survive Earth by hiding," Maya said, finally understanding what was happening. This wasn't really about trade routes or diplomatic protocol. This was about establishing where humanity ranked in the galactic hierarchy of power. "Then how?" Croth asked, completing his third circle. Maya felt something shift inside her. The fear was still there, but underneath it, something else was awakening. Something that reminded her of stories her grandfather had told about facing down grizzly bears in the Alaska wilderness. Something that connected her to every human ancestor who had looked into the darkness and decided to fight rather than flee. "We survived by becoming better predators than anything else on the planet," she said quietly. Croth paused in his circling, tilting his head slightly. "Prove it." Maya understood now. This wasn't about physical confrontation, despite appearances. The Vorthack respected strength, but they weren't looking for violence. They were looking for the kind of strength that made violence unnecessary. She turned slowly, keeping Croth in sight as he resumed his movement around her. Now she was tracking him just as he was tracking her. The subtle shift in dynamic was immediately apparent to everyone in the room. The Vorthack conquered 12 systems through military might, Maya said, her voice taking on a different quality. Impressive. Humans conquered an entire planet that was actively trying to kill them every single day. Not through military campaigns or superior technology, but through pure stubborn refusal to give up. She took a step toward Croth, who stopped moving for the first time since the circling had begun. Every poison, predator, disease, natural disaster, and environmental challenge that Earth could create, humans adapted to survive. Not by avoiding danger, but by learning to thrive in it. We turned the world's deadliest continent into our home. We made pets out of wolves. We learned to swim with sharks and climb mountains that killed most who attempted them. Another step forward. Now Maya was the one approaching, and Croth was standing still. The galaxy looks at humans and sees children from a death world, fragile beings who somehow survived through luck or hiding. But that's not what we are at all. Maya's voice was quiet, but something in her tone made the words carry through the silent room like a physical force. We're the species that looked at everything on our planet that was bigger, stronger, faster, and more dangerous than us, and decided we were going to outlive it all. Not by becoming like them, but by becoming something they couldn't understand or predict. She was close enough now to see her reflection in Crotha's red eyes, and what she saw there made her realize that the dynamic in the room had fundamentally shifted. The Vorthack are apex predators in their environment, Maya continued. But humans are apex predators in every environment. We don't just survive death worlds. We turn every world we touch into our death world. Maya stopped directly in front of Croth, close enough that she had to look up to maintain eye contact. But her posture made it clear she wasn't supplicating. You asked me to prove I'm predator, not prey, she said softly. I just did. The question now is whether the Vorthack hegemony is wise enough to recognize what kind of predator they're looking at. The silence that followed was absolute. Maya could hear her own heartbeat, could feel the attention of every being in the room focused on this moment. Crotha's expression was unreadable, but something in his posture had changed. Then, slowly, deliberately, Croth stepped backward. It was a small movement, barely noticeable to anyone who didn't understand its significance. But in Vorthack culture, Maya knew, the superior predator never gave ground first. By stepping back, Croth was acknowledging something that sent shockwaves through her understanding of the galaxy's power dynamics. The human child, Croth said quietly, speaks truth. Around the table, Maya heard sharp intakes of breath from several beings. Jorik's scales had shifted to a color she'd never seen before, and Mirren's usual composure had cracked completely. The Vorthack hegemony, Croth continued, would be interested in discussing Route 15 further. In private, between equals. Maya felt her knees threaten to buckle as the adrenaline that had been carrying her finally began to ebb. She had just been acknowledged as an equal by one of the galaxy's most dangerous species, and she wasn't entirely sure how she'd managed it. I would welcome that discussion, she said, managing to keep her voice steady. Croth turned to address the room. This session is concluded. The human has demonstrated adequate negotiating capability. As he moved toward the exit, he paused beside Maya. Your species intrigues the hegemony, young predator. We will be watching your development with great interest. After he left, the room remained silent for several heartbeats. Then, slowly, the other beings began to resettle themselves around the table. But Maya noticed that their postures toward her had changed completely. The condescension was gone, replaced by something that looked suspiciously like wariness. Well, Vex said finally, his voice slightly hoarse. That was educational. Maya sank back into her chair, her legs feeling like water. She had just survived her first real diplomatic test, but something told her it was only the beginning. Word of what had happened here would spread through the station, and, with it, a new understanding of what Earth's representatives were capable of. She looked around the table at faces that now showed respect instead of amusement, and realized that everything had just changed. For her, for humanity's place in galactic politics, and for anyone who had underestimated what a teenager from Earth might be capable of accomplishing. The galaxy was about to learn what humans meant when they said they came from a death world. And Maya Chun was going to be the one to teach them. The news traveled through the station like wildfire. By the time Maya returned to her quarters 3 hours after the encounter with Croth, her personal communicator was flooded with meeting requests, interview applications, and formal invitations from species representatives she'd never heard of. Ambassador Valdez was waiting for her in the corridor outside her room, his expression a mixture of pride and concern. "We need to talk," he said without preamble. Maya's quarters had been transformed. Security personnel from 3 different species stood guard outside, and inside, Ambassador Valdez had been joined by Captain Rodriguez and 2 other humans Maya recognized as senior diplomatic staff. The casual atmosphere of her arrival had been replaced by something that felt distinctly military. "Sit down, Maya," Valdez said gently. "We need to discuss what happened today." Maya settled into her chair, suddenly, feeling the weight of exhaustion. The adrenaline rush from her encounter with Croth had left her drained, and the constant stream of attention since then had prevented her from processing what had actually occurred. "First," Valdez continued, "I want you to know that you handled yourself exceptionally well. The reports we're receiving suggest that you've accomplished something unprecedented for someone of your experience level." "What kind of reports?" Maya asked. Captain Rodriguez activated a holographic display showing communication traffic analysis. "In the past 3 hours, diplomatic channels have carried more traffic about Earth than they have in the previous 6 months combined. Every major species delegation has requested updated assessments of human capabilities." The display showed message routing patterns that looked like a spider web centered on the Galactic Council station. Maya realized she was looking at the political equivalent of an earthquake, with herself as the epicenter. "The Vorthack hegemony has filed a formal recognition of diplomatic parity," Valdez said, consulting his notes. "That's never been granted to a first-time representative from any species, let alone someone your age." "What does that mean, practically?" Maya asked. "It means," said Dr. Sarah Chun, the senior cultural analyst, "that you now have the right to negotiate directly with hegemony leadership without supervision or intermediaries. It's a level of diplomatic authority typically reserved for senior ambassadors with decades of experience." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. "They're treating me like a senior diplomat? They're treating you like something more than that," Dr. Chun replied grimly. "The Vorthack don't grant parity lightly. In their culture, it's an acknowledgement that you represent a genuine threat to their interests. They respect you because they consider you dangerous." Captain Rodriguez leaned forward. "Maya, we need you to understand the position you've put yourself in. Half the galaxy now sees you as Earth's secret weapon, and the other half sees you as a potential problem that needs to be managed." The holographic display shifted to show a priority communication from Earth. Director Harrison's familiar face appeared, though he looked older than Maya remembered. "Maya," the recorded message began, "I've been briefed on your encounter with the Vorthack representative. While we're proud of your success, I need you to understand that the political landscape has fundamentally shifted. Earth is now being evaluated as a potential major power rather than a minor participant. This brings opportunities, but also significant dangers." The message continued with detailed instructions about security protocols, communication procedures, and authorization levels for future negotiations. Maya listened with growing unease as she realized that her life had just become exponentially more complicated. "There's something else," Ambassador Valdez said after the message ended. "The Genie Collective has requested a formal meeting to discuss mutual defense agreements. The Keltorian Federation wants to explore technology sharing arrangements. And the Moran Republic has suggested a cultural exchange program." "All because of what happened today?" Maya asked. "All because you demonstrated that humans are more formidable than anyone realized," Dr. Chin explained. "Think about it from their perspective. If a 17-year-old human with minimal experience can face down a Vorthack military advisor, what can experienced human diplomats accomplish? What can human military forces do?" The implications hit Maya like physical blows. Her personal achievement had accidentally revealed capabilities that Earth had been keeping deliberately ambiguous. The careful balance of appearing capable but not threatening had been shattered in a single confrontation. "Are we in trouble?" she asked quietly. Ambassador Valdez sighed. "We're in a completely new situation. Earth's strategy has been based on gradual integration into galactic politics over several decades. You've just accelerated that timeline by about 50 years. A soft chime indicated an incoming priority communication. Captain Rodriguez accepted it, and Maya's heart sank when she recognized the caller. Military advisor Croth's image appeared in the holographic display, his red eyes as penetrating as they had been in person. "I request private communication with Representative Chun," Croth said without preamble. Ambassador Valdez started to respond, but Croth cut him off with a gesture. The hegemony recognizes Representative Chun's diplomatic parity. This request falls under her independent authority. Maya felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders like a physical burden. She was being asked to make decisions that could affect Earth's entire relationship with one of the galaxy's most powerful military forces. "I accept the communication," Maya said, hoping her voice sounded more confident than she felt. The other humans stepped back, but didn't leave the room, which Maya appreciated. Croth's image focused on her with uncomfortable intensity. "The demonstration you provided today has been analyzed by hegemony leadership," Croth began. "We have concluded that previous assessments of human capabilities were insufficient." Maya waited, having learned that silence was often more powerful than words in diplomatic exchanges. "The hegemony wishes to propose a formal alliance between our species," Croth continued. "Not the standard non-aggression pact typically offered to developing civilizations, but a mutual defense treaty between equals." The humans in the room exchanged shocked glances. Maya's mind raced through the implications. A formal alliance with the Vorthak hegemony would instantly establish Earth as a major galactic power, but it would also make them a target for every species that feared Vorthak expansion. Such a proposal would require careful consideration by Earth's leadership, Maya replied diplomatically. Of course, Croth agreed. However, the hegemony wishes to know if Representative Chun believes such an alliance would be beneficial to human interests. Maya realized she was being asked for her personal assessment, not just diplomatic courtesy. The Vorthak valued her opinion specifically because of what she had demonstrated. "I believe," Maya said carefully, "that humans and Vorthak share certain fundamental approaches to problem solving. Both species understand that sometimes strength is necessary to maintain peace." Croth's expression shifted in what Maya had learned to recognize as approval. "An accurate assessment. The hegemony will forward formal proposals through appropriate channels. However, we request that Representative Chun remain involved in negotiations." After the communication ended, the room fell silent. Maya looked around at the faces of Earth's senior diplomatic staff and saw a mixture of amazement, concern, and something that might have been fear. "Maya," Ambassador Valdez said quietly, "do you understand what just happened?" "The Vorthak hegemony just offered Earth a military alliance," Maya replied, "and they want me personally involved in the negotiations. More than that," Dr. Chen added, "they've effectively declared that they consider you to be Earth's primary representative for their relationship. In Vorthak culture, that's tantamount to naming you as their primary diplomatic contact for all human interactions." Captain Rodriguez shook his head. A 17-year-old girl has just become one of the most influential diplomats in the galaxy. The Joint Chiefs are going to have heart attacks. Maya felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what was happening. This morning, she had been a junior representative hoping to prove herself in training exercises. Now she was apparently Earth's primary contact with a major galactic power, with political authority she had never sought and responsibilities she wasn't sure she could handle. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," Ambassador Valdez said, "we figure out how to manage the fact that humanity just became a major player in galactic politics about 5 decades ahead of schedule." The holographic display chimed again, showing another incoming communication request. This time it was from the Keltorian Federation, followed immediately by requests from the Jinti Collective, the Moran Republic, and half a dozen other species Maya had barely heard of, all requesting to speak with Representative Chun personally, Captain Rodriguez noted grimly. Maya looked at the queue of communication requests and realized that her quiet diplomatic career had just become the focal point of Earth's entire galactic strategy. Every species in the galaxy was now trying to figure out what humanity was capable of, and They all wanted to hear it directly from the teenager who had faced down a vortex and made him step backward. "I need to call my parents," Maya said quietly. Ambassador Valdez nodded understandingly. "After we figure out how to explain to Earth's leadership that their careful 50-year integration plan just became irrelevant." Maya stared out her window at the vast expanse of space, wondering if somewhere out there, her family was looking up at the stars and thinking about their daughter. She doubted they could imagine that their little girl had just accidentally redefined humanity's place in the galaxy. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. Tonight, she just wanted to talk to her mom. 3 weeks later, Maya stood in the Grand Assembly Chamber of the Galactic Council, facing the largest gathering of sentient beings in known space. Representatives from over 300 species filled the vast amphitheater, their attention focused on the human teenager who had somehow become the key to resolving a crisis that had threatened to tear the galaxy apart. The Meridian conflict had been brewing for decades. Two major powers, the Stellar Confederation and the Hegemony Alliance, had been locked in a territorial dispute that was slowly drawing in smaller species through a web of defensive pacts and trade agreements. What had started as a border disagreement was approaching the threshold of galactic war. Maya adjusted her formal diplomatic robes and tried to calm her racing heart. The past 3 weeks had been a whirlwind of high-level negotiations, cultural briefings, and political maneuvering that had tested every skill she possessed. But it had all led to this moment, where humanity's newest diplomat would either achieve the impossible or witness the collapse of galactic civilization. "The chair recognizes Representative Chun of Earth," announced the council moderator, her voice echoing through the chamber's acoustic systems. Maya rose from her seat in the human delegation and walked to the central speaking platform. The path seemed longer than it actually was, with hundreds of alien eyes tracking her movement. She could see Croth in the Vorthack delegation, his red eyes unreadable. Near the front, Ambassador Valdez offered her an encouraging nod. "Honored representatives," Maya began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "We gather today not as separate species competing for resources, but as neighbors sharing the same galaxy." The translation systems rendered her words into dozens of languages, but Maya could see that many beings were listening to her original speech rather than relying on translations. Her linguistic abilities had become well known throughout the station. 3 weeks ago, I was introduced to galactic politics as a junior diplomat, hoping to learn through observation. Today, I stand before you with a proposal that could reshape how we approach interspecies conflict. Maya activated the holographic display system, showing a three-dimensional map of the disputed Meridian sector. The contested zones were highlighted in red, with trade routes, resource deposits, and strategic positions clearly marked. "The Meridian conflict appears to be about territorial control," Maya continued. "But analysis reveals something different. This is really about fear. The Stellar Confederation fears encirclement by Hegemony Alliance forces. The Hegemony Alliance fears economic isolation by Confederation trade policies. Both sides are responding to perceived threats rather than actual aggression." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Maya had just reframed the central issue in a way that neither side had publicly acknowledged. "Humans learned something important during our development on Earth," Maya said, her voice gaining strength. "The most dangerous conflicts arise not from actual competition, but from misunderstanding and fear. When two apex predators encounter each other, the result depends on whether they see each other as threats or potential allies." She manipulated the holographic display to show Earth's continental configurations, with overlays showing historical territorial conflicts and their resolutions. "My species spent thousands of years fighting wars over resources, territories, and ideological differences. But we eventually learned that cooperation created more wealth, security, and opportunity than competition ever could." Maya paused, looking directly at the Stellar Confederation's lead representative, then at the Hegemony Alliance delegation. "I propose that we treat the Meridian conflict not as a zero-sum territorial dispute, but as an opportunity to demonstrate galactic civilization's capacity for innovative problem-solving." The holographic display shifted to show a detailed plan that Maya and her team had developed over the past 3 weeks. It was ambitious, complex, and completely unprecedented in galactic politics. Joint administration of the Meridian sector by both the Stellar Confederation and Hegemony Alliance, with oversight by a neutral council including representatives from affected smaller species. The chamber erupted in shocked conversation. Joint administration was theoretically possible under galactic law, but it had never been attempted between major powers. The benefits would be substantial, Maya continued over the noise. The Confederation gains guaranteed access to hegemony trade networks. The Alliance gains Confederation technological sharing agreements. Both sides gain reduced military expenditure and increased economic growth. Ambassador Thek of the Stellar Confederation rose from his seat. Representative Chun proposes that we share sovereignty with our rivals. This is naive idealism from a species too young to understand galactic realities. Maya turned to face him directly. Ambassador Thek, your species has been locked in this conflict for 47 years. In that time, you've spent more resources on military buildup than it would cost to terraform 12 worlds. How has traditional thinking served you? The directness of her challenge clearly surprised him. In formal council sessions, junior representatives typically deferred to senior diplomats. Furthermore, Maya continued, humanity may be young, but we've successfully resolved similar conflicts through cooperation rather than domination. The proposal isn't idealistic, it's practical. Both sides get what they actually need while saving the resources they're currently wasting on preparation for a war nobody wants. High Admiral Vextress of the Hegemony Alliance stood slowly, her crystalline features reflecting the chamber's lights. The human child suggests that military readiness is wasteful. Perhaps her species lacks understanding of strategic necessities. Maya felt the familiar spike of annoyance at being called a child, but she had learned to use that reaction productively. High Admiral, my species survived on a death world by understanding that the deadliest threats often require the most creative solutions. We learned to turn natural disasters into advantages, predators into partners, and seemingly impossible challenges into opportunities for growth. She manipulated the holographic display again, showing detailed economic projections for the joint administration proposal. Military readiness has its place, but eternal conflict readiness becomes its own trap. You've both built forces capable of winning a war that would destroy the resources you're fighting to control. Joint administration lets you redirect that military strength toward external threats while securing the resources you need through cooperation. Croth rose from his seat in the Vorthak delegation. Maya tensed, wondering if he was about to support or oppose her proposal. The Vorthak hegemony has analyzed Representative Chin's proposal, he announced, his voice carrying across the silent chamber. We find it strategically sound. The human demonstrates predator thinking. Identify what you actually need, secure it efficiently, eliminate wasteful conflict. The impact of Vorthak's support was immediate and visible. Conversations erupted throughout the chamber as species recalculated their positions based on the hegemony's backing. Moreover, Croth continued, the hegemony offers to guarantee the security of joint administration territories against external threats. Any force that attacks Meridian sector installations will face Vorthak response. Maya felt her heart skip. Croth had just offered military protection for her proposal, which transformed it from an idealistic concept into a practical reality backed by one of the galaxy's most feared military forces. Ambassador Lex of the Jinti Collective stood next. The collective supports the proposal with one modification. The Neutral Oversight Council should include rotating membership to prevent permanent power blocks from forming. The Keltorian Federation agrees, announced Representative Thrix, his skin shifting to supportive blue tones. With the addition of mandatory technology sharing protocols between all participating species, Maya watched in amazement as species after species rose to voice support for modified versions of her proposal. What had started as a desperate attempt to prevent war was becoming a comprehensive framework for galactic cooperation. Ambassador Thek of the Stellar Confederation requested recognition again. The Confederation requires time to consider the proposal and its modifications. The Hegemony Alliance concurs, added High Admiral Vextress. This represents a fundamental shift in galactic politics. Proper deliberation is necessary. Maya had expected this. Neither major power could accept such a significant change without extensive internal consultation. I propose a 30-day consideration period, Maya said, during which time all parties maintain current positions without escalation. A subcommittee can address technical details and modifications. Council moderator Vex called for a formal vote on the consideration period. It passed with overwhelming support, which Maya interpreted as a sign that most species genuinely wanted to find a peaceful solution. As the formal session concluded, Maya was surrounded by representatives offering congratulations, asking detailed questions, and requesting private meetings. The shy teenager who had arrived at the station a month ago felt like a different person entirely. Ambassador Valdez appeared at her side, gently extracting her from the crowd. "How do you feel?" he asked as they walked toward the exit. Maya considered the question, terrified and exhilarated at the same time. Did we actually just prevent a galactic war? "We won't know for certain until the major powers make their decisions," Valdez replied. "But, Maya, regardless of the outcome, you've fundamentally changed how the galaxy sees humanity. More importantly, you've changed how they see what's possible in interspecies relations." As they reached the exit, Croth appeared beside them with his characteristic silent approach. "Representative Chun," he said formally, "the Hegemony Leadership Council wishes to extend an invitation for you to visit the Vorthak homeworld." Maya felt her eyes widen. "That's an incredible honor." "It is also unprecedented," Croth replied. "No non-Vorthak has ever been invited to our homeworld. But, then, you are proving to be unprecedented in many ways." After Croth departed, Maya walked with Ambassador Valdez toward the diplomatic quarters. The corridors seemed different now, less intimidating and more familiar. She had found her place in this vast station, and, more importantly, she had found her purpose in the galaxy. "Maya," Valdez said quietly, "I want you to know that what you've accomplished here will be studied and admired for generations. You've shown the galaxy what human diplomacy can achieve." Maya looked out through one of the observation windows at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, 300 species were considering a new way of resolving conflicts. Species that a month ago had seen her as a curious child now looked to her for innovative solutions to seemingly impossible problems. "I keep thinking about something my grandmother told me before I left Earth," Maya said. "She said that the most important battles aren't won through strength, but through understanding." I finally get what she meant. 3 weeks later, both the Stellar Confederation and Hegemony Alliance accepted the joint administration proposal with modifications. The Meridian Accords became the template for resolving territorial disputes throughout the galaxy. Maya Chun became the youngest being ever awarded the Galactic Peace Prize, and humanity's reputation evolved from interesting newcomers to natural mediators. But, for Maya, the greatest reward was simpler. The knowledge that when the galaxy had faced its greatest test, a teenager from Earth had helped them choose cooperation over conflict, understanding over fear, and hope over despair. The Deathworld girl who had once been surrounded by predators had taught the galaxy that the strongest predators are those wise enough to choose when not to hunt.